Morning, everybody. This my current screen. You should be looking at tips to continually prevent COVID-19. It sounds like a tape recording, or it sounds like a copy paste repeat all the time. But if you look at the numbers, guys, people are not doing this. As contractors or as plumbers, we send people to other people's houses. We're not necessarily familiar with their status, or even some of our staff. Bearing in mind, those people go in and out of buildings. Make sure, be the responsible one, be that company owner that worries about his staff, making sure everybody is healthy, keeps healthy, and keeps safe. So they're the tips, or they're the bullets. Have a look at them. It's nothing new. It is just something, I think we basically get blunted by this continuous barrage of please wear your mask, sanitize, do all these things, and then we end up not doing it at all. So let's get into this morning's session. I did this at the end of 2019, but we're still having a bit of hassles with this. So calling for inspections despite issuing COCs. I'd like to start off with this little caption from the PRB website. Plumbers are reminded that when signing the PRB registration form, they agree to the PRB Plumbers Code of Conduct, which subsequently reads as follows. PRB registered licensed plumbers agree to issue a certificate, COC, on all plumbing works undertaken as a licensed plumber, and shall further issue the COC in terms of the prescribed requirements for issuing that COC. Important to note, and this is where the discussion's heading, that COC is between the client, developer, builder, and the plumber. The local authority, their own rules, their own set of requirements that we'll look at now. The problem is that not the problem, the issue at hand is that there's a caption down the bottom of that COC that gets signed by the plumber. The above plumbing works was carried out by me under my supervision, and that it complies in all respects to plumbing regulations, laws, national compulsory standards, and local bylaws. And herein lies the problem. The moment we step down from the national regulation, and it comes to the application of the building regulations and the actual inspections and work done within your municipal boundaries or in your metro boundaries, it becomes a local authority thing. So the argument around COC, no COC, license, no license, put that aside. Think about this like a responsible plumber would with regards to approaching his work. I'm just going to flick through a couple of screens so you guys can see. You might recognize your hometown or your metro. Basically, all of these metros, as it stands here now, and we can keep going through them, they'll tell you that after the completion of a job, you need to have this thing. The test shall be in the presence of an authorized personnel. A certificate certifying the work. So if you on the drainage side, you could actually have them come and test it and set out as to the standards set out in the building regulation. So we can keep going at this. You can go from one local authority to another. Ekurhuleni goes a step further to say that you need to have it cleaned, you need to have all of those things there, and we'll get back to those 2 days shortly. When any drainage installation is being or has been installed, or any alteration or extension of any existing installation is being or has been carried out, no person shall cover any part of that installation, alteration, or extension of cause, permit, or suffer it to be covered until it has been inspected and approved by the council. Inspected means that the inspector's been there so he can cover it up. Inspected and approved means that he was happy with what was seen or with what was on site, and we have to, or we're allowed to then cover up there. You can go to Mossel Bay in the Southern Cape. You can go to Maritzburg, Sunduzi. You can go that way if you want to. Solplaatjie all the way up in Kimberley, Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, and then City of Tshwane. I'd like for the guys in Pretoria and that area in Tshwane itself, I'd like for you to look at your bylaws. It says that where you've done a drainage installation that's been constructed or drainage work has been carried out, fails to comply in any respect with any of the provisions of the building regulations or these bylaws. In other words, your Tshwane local bylaws. The owner must notwithstanding the fact that he or she may have received approval for the plans for that installation of work, carry out upon receiving written notice the repairs, replacements, alterations, or maintenance work in respect of that installation. So even if the plan was approved by the local authority and there's like minor issues on the plan, you'll find that they still expect you to go back and sort it out. Then I skipped R1 in Nelson Mandela Bay for a reason. You'll find that this one actually refers to section 6.8 of SANS 10252 of 1993. So whether it's the code of practice or the standard for drainage, or whether it's the building regulations that get referred to, let's have a look at 6.8. 6.8 says the drainage installation shall be inspected by the local authority, not another plumber, not PRB, not IOPSA compliance auditor. It shall be inspected by the local authority as prescribed in regulation A22 of the building regulations. So you see that Ekurhuleni basically used this portion of the standard in their bylaw. Drainage installation should be inspected by the owner or his representative as the installation work proceeds. On completion of the installation, before any work is concealed or covered, it should be ensured that, before we get to those 4 points there, I'd like for you to have a look at this. The standard says the installation should be inspected by the owner or his representative. And let's be realistic, guys, we're in business. There's no ways that an owner is going to pay you X amount of money to do a job and then take the responsibility of actually doing an inspection on the work that you're doing if he's already paying you for it. So when it comes to or by his representative, if you are the appointed or selected contractor, albeit by contract, by tender or by selection, then that means that you are his representative. All pipes and fixtures comply with the provisions of the standard and are free from defects. All pipes and fittings are clear of debris and superfluous matter. No jointing material projects into the pipe, and all joints maintain the continuity of the bore. And the pipework is placed, positioned, and secured. So normally I start with a big hammer, but in this case, we looked at the standard. There you can see the references if you need to take them down. A22 of the building regulations then continues to say the following. Notice in the form required by the local authority shall be given by the owner to the local authority of a date which shall be at least 2 working days from the date of receipt by it of such a notice on which the case may be. And we jump straight through to C because the drainage and the fire is not our business. I mean, the foundation and the fire is not our problem at this stage. Any drainage installation will be ready for inspection and testing. So 2 days notice, give the guys from the council a heads up to say, this is where it's happening. This is where we're busy. We've got a drainage installation for inspection and testing. Then we skip to the next section that says no owner shall construct a foundation until the trenches, and then it says there, or enclose a drainage installation until such an installation has been inspected, tested, and approved by the local authority, provided this requirement shall not apply if that inspection has not been carried out at the end of the working day in sub-regulation 2. So you've given the guys 2 days notice, and he hasn't pitched up. It's a very thin line to be treading. The argument about opening back up or working this way or that way, it will always come back and be a discussion point, because on a different day, you might phone the municipal inspector and expect him to pitch up or beg him to pitch up on the same day because you need to fix it up. So this thing does run, or it does cut both ways. So just important to note point 4. Any owner who fails to comply with the requirements of this regulation shall be guilty of an offense. Then the the National Building Regulation continues to say in P7 that all these pipes need to be tested as per 426 and 427, as the case may be. And then it says that no person shall put into use any drainage installation before such an installation has been inspected, tested, and passed by the local authority. So we've now touched on 4 or 5 different documents that all say exactly the same thing: inspected, tested, and passed by the local authority as complying with these regulations. And once again, being a regulation, any person who contravenes sub-regulation 3 shall be guilty of an offence. So having mentioned 426 and 427, it's pretty much straightforward. In SANS 10-400 Part P, which is part of the application of building regulations. So the building inspector or the BCO in your area should have a copy of this in his office, as should you in your business or for your business sake. 426 refers to test for below ground drainage, gives you an idea of what is required. 427 is in the test for discharge pipes and vent pipes above ground, and that then specifies what needs to be done. So if this is the short version from SANS 10-400 Part P, it basically tells you what you need to do to satisfy the regulation. In other words, if you are going to be testing, this is what we are going to be testing to. If we take the same document and we go into more detail in SANS 10252 Part 2, which is the installation of drainage, then it puts down point for point from A to G exactly what needs to happen, how you do this thing. I'm not going to read through all of this. This is a far easier way to do it. You end up plugging the drain, you put the air into the system until you get that 35 millimeters of head or 0.35 kPa pressure in the system, and you leave it. Close the inlet cock, and after 3 minutes, read the pressure of the installation. So it is pretty much straightforward. It's not even that complicated when it comes to testing the setup. If you are going to be calling for a inspection or a test, see whether the work there's an approved plan. Otherwise, your chances of someone coming out there very, very slim. Confirm that the work and the plan related. Sounds pretty much straightforward, but here's a stupid little example of how things can go wrong. That was approved. Sorry, let me just get my. Here we go. That was approved originally, and then the contractor, for some of the other reason, whether it was saving time or there was an obstacle or maybe a pellet of bricks or something in the way, they decided to cut back into the system here. And then at future extension stage, that was not indicated or that was not on that plan, there's a change of direction under the building. There's a reason why the plan was designed and approved like that. So we confirm that it complies with the building plan that was put in place. We do visual inspections prior to testing. There's no sense in having an inspection done or even testing a line with filling it with air or applying pressure, smoke, whatever you want to use on that installation. We make sure that the thing complies, it's bedded properly, it's backfilled to a point where you can get access into it. Telkom ducting, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. So you do your own visual inspection prior to calling for the test. So if you open an IE cover and there's water lying in the pipe, you know for a fact it's not going to mysteriously disappear when the inspector gets there. So if there's water backlog, it's either filth in the or dirt, sand, dagga, whatever maybe a cement bag that you used for keeping the sand out. Something is keeping this water from flowing, so that is definitely not going to go anywhere. We make sure that there's access points as per the building regs and 10-400 Part P. You calling for a drainage inspection, that is not going to happen. Here you can see this pipe dropping down to the connection, no access against the flow. So that inspector is more than likely going to get back in his vehicle and move on to the next site. Same thing applies. So we need to make sure the access is there. We also need to make sure that the gradient is there. I mean, if the thing is flat or it's got a backfall on it, it's obviously not going to just be signed off. It needs to be done as per the requirements. And then as simple as having, although most municipal inspectors you'll find have their own equipment, the standard requires you to be, and the bylaws says that you need to provide the equipment for such a test. But most, like I say, the pros have got their own equipment. So if we look at a bore test, this would be a proper, you see that little oval in the background there. That simply means that that pipe is bowed either up or down. There's an obstruction in there somewhere, so I've got no objection in signing off the one on the left, but the one on the right has definitely got some work to be done. Then if you really want to go into detail with regards to the actual air test, you'll find that there's the comment that was part of that previous reference to how those 8 points on how you do the test. There's a couple of nice tips here. You can either have smoke in there, but not burn stuff in the pipe. You can have soapy solution around the joints to see where the bubbles are forming. And then the suggestion that you use water at the base of a stack for a seal or to cover the plug. These things all contribute to making sure that the air doesn't get out of the system. Then the last one I'd like to touch on, water can be used to test the installation. Take note, it can be used. The test should not be applied to the whole installation, but to a part where the defect is most probably located. Before pipes are filled, and then you end up making sure you don't exceed a 5-meter head, because 50 kPa is pretty much the limit of a drainage fitting, or the required limit of a drainage fitting. But as far as using water is concerned, you can see that little calculation there. If you take a 30-meter length of 110 mil pipe, you end up wasting almost 300 liters of water just being flushed down the drain. That's if you pass your drain test first time round. So instead of using the water, I think most local authorities, especially the ones with water restrictions like ourselves, they prefer to do the air test, because then that would be in and out, pressurize the line, test it, make sure that it happens. It's all inspected, passed, you walk away, and you've saved 300 liters of water for every 30 meters of drainage. So it's just something to bear in mind. Then almost there, the definition of a competent person. You'll see, I'm not going to read that because we need to make sure that a competent person is this specific one from the same SANS 10400 Part B, is a generic definition to be used where no other definition is given or no references are made to other standards. Other parts of SANS 10400 contain definitions of a more specific nature relevant to their disciplines. So guess what? 10400 Part B for the plumber has got a very specific reference to a competent person sanitation. In other words, someone that could do design or that can do work on a system is a person who is registered in terms of Engineering Profession Act. In other words, he's got a PRNG number as either a professional engineer or a professional engineering technologist. He has a tertiary qualification, either a degree or diploma in civil or mechanical engineering. That's why you'll find sometimes they get referred to as wet services engineers, and is generally recognized or can furnish acceptable proof having the necessary experience and training to undertake rational assessments or designs in the field of sanitation. So what we have been getting lately, and I'll finish off by explaining why I put this in here. Even a competent person needs to apply to the local authority to be accepted or approved for that specific design as being competent. So this person might be a professional engineer structural, but he is not going to get a civil design approved, because when he submits his paperwork, he's got a different electrical engineer can't sign off a drain. The fact that he's registered as an engineer, he still needs to be in that field of work that he's aiming at. Now, the reason I dragged that in there quickly was that when you look at the building regulations, and this thing, once we stopped with the COC and we started working on the bylaws and all the different references, there's a portion in the building regs that says that the requirements of the building regulations shall be complied with by adhering to all the requirements of the prescriptive regulations, which is straightforward, and you can satisfying the functional regulation by adopting a building solution that complies with the requirements of the relevant part SANS 10400. Or the last option, reliably demonstrating or predicting with certainty to the satisfaction of the local authority. Remember, I said this competent person still needs to do the thing to the local authority, that an adopted building solution has an equivalent or superior performance to a solution that already complies with 10400. So if we do the thing that plumbers do and we say that we adhere to the requirements of 10400 or the requirements of the regulation, there's no need for this chap. But if there's anything untoward or there's anything not deemed to satisfy, then there would be a rational design. He'll fill in a form 2. He'll provide his own PI cover to say that what he's doing is acceptable, etc., etc., etc. So when we're looking at 1B2, I'd like for you to have a look at the next slide. An approved competent person who satisfies the requirements of subregulation 1, which we looked at, in terms of subregulation 1B2, in respect of a system, measure, facility, parameter, or installation, shall inspect and certify upon completion in accordance with the requirements of A19. So if this thing was a rational design, it was a design by a specific competent person, only that person can sign off that installation. So if you did drainage according to a rational design that was 1 in 80 fall on a 110 mil pipe, the council would have asked for a rational design. So when you do the drainage, anyone can do the above ground, or you do what plumbers are entitled to do as per the deemed to satisfy requirements, but only that gentleman or lady that did the design on the system will be the one to inspect. And it's not, you see, it's not should or maybe he should go to site. He shall inspect and certify upon completion. So when it comes to the drain test, the pressure test, the bore test, all of those type of things, it will be done by that competent person. Almost there, guys. I'm going to show you a couple of reasons why we need to have open trench inspections, or why we need to have work tested and checked before closing up a trench. Because once this is all nice, concrete is fixed and everything else is sorted out, you won't see that leg. So there's no access on that. You won't see these fittings being forced into position or out of sync and have a 90-degree on a rodding eye coming into a system. These things all get covered up before the inspector gets there. There's no ways he can see that. Same applies here. There was, I'm not even going to go into detail. I'm sure you can see what's happening here. So all I need to add to you is that when I was an apprentice, an engineer told me that anything you drop down a line falls into a little heap down the bottom. So you can imagine if this is a domestic drain, and you can see on the other side the same thing happened, and they added another bit of drainage to come into that same line up against the building there. So you can see now where you actually come out with this water line and the rest of it. So open trench means someone checks the work before you cover it up. The definition of an inspection eye is an access opening to the interior of any pipe or pipe fitting in a drainage installation provided solely for the purpose of inspection and testing, and to which permanent access after completion of that installation need not be provided. So we get to site, there's nowhere to put the torch in the mirror, there's no access into this line, so we can't check this away and we can't check that away. The requirement for an IE is that for a inspection and testing, you need to provide an inspection eye. So yes, some of them are $30 more, and sir, but we don't have stock or whatever. How do you suggest we get a torch in a mirror into a branch unless we have an inspection eye? Guys, the first slide said it all. Things are going to probably get a bit worse before it gets better. Look after yourself, look after your staff and your families, keep safe, and then we'll chat again soon.